silk whispered beneath slippered feet, and the chandeliers above glittered like captive stars, bathing the grand pavilion in honeyed light. Princess Eleonora stood poised at the head of the marble staircase, breath swelling with youthful certainty, believing the world itself awaited her smile. At 17, she had known only admiration. Garlands of compliments, soft curtsies, warm hands brushing her gloves with reverence. She had been raised not merely to be adored, but to expect it, as if affection were her inheritance as surely as the golden crest embroidered upon her bodice. Tonight, she believed it would be no different. Music unfurled like velvet, violins sighing, flutes bright as morning birds. Courtiers arranged themselves like jeweled ornaments against crimson drapery, and eyes turned as Eleonora descended, each step deliberate, gown floating like moonlit mist around her. She had been told she looked radiant, a porcelain vision crowned in white roses, innocence draped in elegance. The kingdom's treasured daughter, their gentle promise of a hopeful future. Her father, King Aldrich, stood near the dais, posture proud, beard silvering at the edges. When he saw her, his expression softened, not indulgent, but pleased as one satisfied with a masterpiece he had sculpted through discipline and devotion. Eleonora's chest lifted. Tonight marked the spring ball, where her betrothal to Lord Alastair of Rosehaven would be announced publicly, a union expected, applauded, and whispered about since she was old enough to waltz. She caught sight of Alastair now, tall, handsome, fair hair gleaming, blue eyes warm with the confidence of a man who believed life would always smile for him. He raised a glass in her direction. Her heart fluttered, a dream unfolding. Yet dreams, like crystal, are most beautiful the moment before they shatter. Across the ballroom, Lady Marianne slid through the crowd, graceful, predatory, a serpent in silk. Envy flickered within her dark gaze like venom caught in lamplight. She had once imagined Alastair would be hers, and though she had aligned herself with Eleonora for years, the sweetness of her smiles had always felt slightly chilled, like wine poured over ice. Eleonora barely noticed her now. She was too radiant in her expectation, too certain in her belonging. Then a ripple disturbed the air. A whisper, sharp as the snap of a twig, cut through music's gentle currents. Scandal, a voice murmured. Disgrace? Another, the letter, passed hand to hand. Have you seen it? The courtiers leaned together like reeds bending to sudden wind. Fans fluttered. Gloved fingers pressed to pearls. Curious eyes darted. Eleonora's step wavered. Something cold brushed her spine. But she smiled, she always smiled at gatherings. A princess's first defense was grace. Yet as she reached the final staircase step, a folded sheet of parchment, creased and stained by many hands, drifted like a cursed petal to land before her. On its surface, her name. And beneath, slander so crude no soul in the kingdom could read it without a blush. It claimed she had secretly promised herself to a palace guard, that she had written of moonlit trysts and forbidden kisses, that purity, that priceless currency traded among nobles, had been spent in secret shadows. Lies, vile brazen lies. Her pulse thundered, breath caught like silk snagged on thorn. Fingers trembled at her sides, yet she dared not reach for the letter. To touch it would give it power. Still everyone saw. They always saw. A hush fell, not reverent, but ravenous. Surely not, murmured a lady near the orchestra. What shame, whispered an elder lord, regretful only for the entertainment ending too soon. The music faltered, strings quivering like startled birds. Alastair's step slowed as he approached, glass lowering in his hand. For a fleeting heartbeat, hope held, the kind that blooms only in the naive. Surely he would take her hand, laugh at this absurd cruelty, shield her with devotion. She lifted her chin, eyes shimmering like fragile glass in candlelight. But his expression shifted, a flicker, sharp and unmistakable, disgust. Doubt slid across his face like frost claiming a window pane. Then distance. He moved back. Not much, only a step, yet enough to mark abandonment more deeply than a blow. "Your Highness," he said, voice polite enough to kill. "I had believed you incapable of such impropriety." The world contracted. The ballroom seemed to tilt. Eleonora opened her lips to speak, to deny, to breathe. But her father's gaze struck first. Not fury. Worse, disappointment. Cold, heavy royal. A verdict before trial. "Eleonora," he said quietly, voice threaded with exhaustion, "tell me this is false." His tone implied he already feared the answer. Shame surged, hot, choking, unbearable. She felt every eye pierce her like needles. She felt her childhood crumble, each polished lesson. Sit straight, speak softly, never disgrace the crown. Turning to ash, her throat burned. "Father, I would never." Lady Marianne's voice sliced through her plea, sweet as honey, deadly as poison. "Your Majesty, we must protect appearances. Even rumors can ruin alliances." Eleonora looked at her. The poised tilt of her head, the modest cast of her eyes, the triumph gleaming beneath the veil of sympathy. A serpent crowned in silk. The king exhaled heavily. "Step away, Eleonora." One sentence. One exile. Not from palace walls, from belonging. Air fled her lungs. She dipped in a shaky curtsy, legs weak, heart shuddering. She turned. The music resumed mechanically, hollow and trembling. Conversations rose again, artificial and brittle like porcelain laughter after a funeral. She walked, no, fled, toward the terrace, vision blurring. Her slippers struck marble like fading echoes of a life already lost. The night air struck her cheeks cruelly, wind tasting of rain and distant storm. She gripped the balustrade, knuckles white, breaths ragged. Light from the chandeliers spilled onto the garden, gold fading into deep shadow. Her world, once gilded, collapsed into silence. And then, in the cool hush of darkness, she sensed him. A presence still as carved stone, yet vast as the night itself. She lifted her gaze. On the terrace's upper landing, half hidden in shadows, stood a tall figure draped in black, cloak stirring like storm clouds. Lord Lysander Blackthorn, the Duke feared in every whispered corridor, rumored merciless, cursed by tragedy, untouched by court affection. His eyes, pale as winter steel, studied her not with scorn, but something harsher, deeper. Recognition. He did not move nor speak, yet his gaze held her like iron. From the ballroom behind, laughter swelled, bright, cruel, oblivious. Eleonora pressed a trembling hand to her chest, barely holding together the pieces, shattering inside her. And the Duke, silent sentinel in shadow, watched as her world, once bathed in light, drowned in darkness for the first time. Had she glanced back one moment later, she would have seen him descend one step toward her, a gesture not of pity, but of possession. Dawn crept pale and reluctant over the palace gardens, washing marble fountains in a bruised lavender gloom. Frost clung to rose petals like sorrow refusing to thaw. Princess Eleonora moved through the silent path, cloak drawn tight, each step a trembling protest against the world that had so swiftly turned its face from her. Only yesterday she had been a daughter of radiance. Now she was a whispered cautionary tale slipping through corridors like a faded ghost. Servants, who once bowed eagerly, now lowered their gazes as though shame might be contagious. Every polished surface seemed to reflect not her face, but the echo of that ruinous moment in the ballroom, humiliation immortalized in crystal and candlelight. She reached the old stone bench beneath the winter magnolia, a place she had once taken refuge in as a child, dreaming of kindness and courtly love. Dreams, she now understood, were delicate creatures, and reality devoured them without remorse. Her fingers brushed the cold stone, grounding her. "I did nothing wrong," she whispered, voice cracking. "I am still who I was." Yet truth and reputation were not siblings in the court. One could be flawless and still be slaughtered by rumor. A rustle disturbed the hush. Her heart startled, instinct begging for solitude. But the presence that emerged from behind the frost-touched hedges was not a maid, nor curious noble. It was him. The Duke of Blackthorn stepped into the half-light, a figure carved from night and command, boots silent on damp earth. cloak sweeping behind him like a shadow determined to keep pace. His face, stern and elegant in its severity, bore no courtesy of warmth. But neither did it wear the satisfaction others took in her downfall. He paused, as though granting her space to retreat if she wished. She did not move. Pride, though battered, remained stubborn in her bones. She straightened her spine. "Do you make a habit of observing me, my lord?" His eyes, pale, unsettling, like winter river water beneath ice, studied her unflinchingly. "Not habit," he replied. His voice held a deep timbre, disciplined, capable of command without raising volume. "Purpose." The words scraped across her composure. "And what purpose is that?" "To see truth where others surrender to rumor." She flinched. Kindness was not expected. Suspicion, yes. Ridicule, always. But scrutiny without malice? It unsettled her more than cruelty. "Truth," she echoed softly. "Truth has been sentenced without trial. Only by the weak." His gaze did not waver. Strength does not fear whisper nor shadow. She turned away, breath misting in cold air. "I do not feel strong." "You endure humiliation while standing. That is strength." A tremor passed through her, not shyness, but something sharper, like dignity slowly rekindling. Before she could answer, he reached into his cloak and withdrew a folded piece of fabric. Not gaudy, not sentimental. A dark handkerchief embroidered in silver thread with a single crest, the raven sigil of House Blackthorn. He placed it beside her on the bench, no gesture of courtly theatrics, simply deliberate offering. She looked at it as though it were a blade. "Why give me this?" "In this court," he said, "you will find protection rarely accompanies purity. It follows power. You think I require protection." "I know you do," he said, calm as stone. "All who fall from favor do." Anger flickered. "I have not fallen. I was pushed." A muscle shifted in his jaw. Approval, perhaps. "Even so, they will not let you rise." Her voice wavered. "And you would?" He did not answer immediately. Wind rattled bare branches overhead, scattering the last brittle leaves. When he spoke, it was quieter, not softer, simply restrained. "I do not offer charity, princess. I offer alliance." Alliances in courts were bargains of blood and motive. To what end? That remains mine to know. For now. She should have rejected him. Pride demanded distance from the most feared noble in the kingdom. Yet when she reached for the handkerchief, fingers brushing silk, it felt not like surrender, but a tether, thin, uncertain, fragile, but real. The garden stirred with hurried steps. A young noble, flushed and breathless from gossip's frenzy, approached. Lord Peregrine, always eager to impress the powerful and ridicule the fallen. He bowed to the Duke, too low, theatrical, then turned to Eleonora with a smirk sharp as thorn. "Your Highness," he drawled, voice dripping venomous sweetness, "I had not realized exiled royalty walked the gardens so early. How industrious of you to practice humility." Her throat tightened. She opened her mouth, but the Duke's presence beside her seemed to command silence more effectively than any intimidation. He stepped forward, not threatening, merely existing with such force that Peregrine's smirk faltered. "You presume much," the Duke murmured. "I mean only concern," Peregrine stammered, false innocence cracking. "It is tragic when a princess loses innocence. The kingdom mourns purity squandered." Eleonora's breath hitched, humiliation blooming anew. Before she could retreat into silence, the Duke's voice cut through the air like steel sliding from scabbard. "Purity," he said coldly, "is not measured by rumor nor by the trembling ignorance of lesser men." His gaze narrowed. "Apologize." Peregrine paled. I meant no offense." "Apologize." Peregrine bowed, so fast his balance faltered. "My deepest regrets, Your Highness." Then he fled, steps tripping, dignity abandoned in his haste. Silence returned, thick and stunned. Eleonora stared at the Duke, heartbeat loud as drumbeat in her ears. No gallantry, no chivalrous smile, only unwavering conviction, dangerous as storm-cloud steel. "You intimidate them all," she breathed. "I correct them," he replied. Fear is simply the language they understand. And what language do you understand? His eyes held hers, unblinking. Truth, loyalty, debt, power, and suffering. Something inside her quivered, not fear. Recognition. For the first time since her disgrace, she felt seen not as a fallen jewel, but as a person wounded and standing still. "Thank you," she whispered. "I do not seek gratitude," he answered. "Gratitude is fragile. Allegiance endures." She clutched the handkerchief. "I cannot promise allegiance. I did not ask for it." His cloak shifted in wind. "I simply marked you." Her breath halted. "Marked." "Let them wonder if you are under my protection," he said. "Doubt can be armor." Protection or possession, she could not tell. But the garden suddenly felt less cold. He turned to leave, then paused, head inclining slightly. "Princess," he said, voice low enough that wind nearly stole it, "you believe you have lost the world. You have only lost illusions." She watched him disappear into shadow, leaving only silence and the weight of his words behind. Frost glittered on the handkerchief like starlight trapped in darkness. From the palace windows, silhouettes moved, whispers already beginning anew, drawn like moths to scandal. And somewhere inside those murmurs, a rumor would soon bloom like poisonous ivy. The fallen princess now carried the mark of the fearsome duke. A storm prowled the horizon like a restless beast, clouds swollen and bruised above the palace's ancient stone. Wind hissed along the corridors, slithering beneath door frames and stirring candle flames into nervous flickers. Princess Eleonora's footsteps echoed down the deserted hall, soft yet urgent, as though she feared company as much as she longed for solace. The handkerchief he had given her lay hidden in her sleeve, its embroidered raven pressing faintly against her wrist like a secret pulse. Rumors had multiplied like locusts, feeding on her grief. She sought refuge not in sunlight, but in silence, and tonight the forgotten library promised both. Shelves stretched into shadows, towering like wooden sentinels that guarded centuries of whispered knowledge. Dust perfumed the air, stirred by her entrance, tiny motes swirling like ghosts awakened. A single candle flickered on the reading table, abandoned by a careless servant fleeing the storm's approach. She closed the door softly and exhaled, chest tight from days spent armoring herself against scrutiny. Here, at last, she could ache without watching eyes. She rested trembling fingers on leather-bound volumes, as though wisdom might seep into her bones and steady them. The rain struck stained glass windows in growing rhythm, a chorus of nature mourning with her. Alone, she let her chin dip, eyes stinging, shoulders sagging under invisible weight. The library had always felt sacred. Now it felt like sanctuary. Yet sanctuaries, she had learned, were fragile things. A whisper of movement brushed the air, faint but undeniable, the subtle displacement one feels when another presence asserts itself. She turned sharply, heart seizing. There he stood, emerging from the dim between shelves like a phantom born of shadow and steel. Duke Lysander Blackthorn regarded her with an unreadable expression, the storm's muted flashes gilding the edges of his dark cloak and sharp profile. She stiffened instinctively, breath caught between dread and inexplicable relief. "Must you haunt every corner I retreat to?" Her voice wavered, but defiance laced its tremor. He stepped forward, not looming, merely existing with a gravity that altered the room. "You choose corners where truth hides," he answered. Her jaw tightened. "Truth? In this place, truth is drowned by gossip. I am drowning with it." She expected mockery or detached observation. Instead, his gaze softened by the thinnest fraction, a shift like winter yielding to the first reluctant thaw. "Rumor is the coward's weapon," he murmured. "It wounds without presence, strikes without honor." She bit back a bitter laugh. "And reputation is a noose tied by hands that once applauded me." Silence settled between them, heavy yet intimate. Rain hammered the windows, thunder rolling like ancient judgment. "You did not deserve their cruelty," he said at last. "Deserving has nothing to do with it," she replied. "Court affection is conditional. I merely forgot the conditions." The words tasted like resignation, yet speaking them eased a fraction of the ache. He moved closer, the faint scent of rain-soaked earth trailing him. "You believe you stand alone," he said, "but solitude is a choice only when there are alternatives." She lifted her chin, refusing to let sorrow consume dignity. "And what alternative do you offer, my lord? Alliance without explanation? Protection without affection? Mystery mistaken for mercy?" His lips curved, not into a smile, but into a line carved by memories sharper than knives. "I offer truth," he said quietly. "If you dare look at it." She swallowed. "Then speak it." A long pause. Wind rattled the windows as though urging confession. Finally he exhaled. "The world wears light like costume. I do not trust things that shine too brightly. I trust what has survived darkness." Her breath stilled. "You mean pain?" "I mean resilience," he corrected. "A jeweled crown cannot teach endurance. Humiliation can." She blinked, stunned by the rawness beneath his iron composure. "Is that what shaped you? Rumor whispers of tragedy." He did not flinch, though something flickered behind his eyes, grief, anger, or simply memory refusing burial. "Once," he said, voice low, "I believed loyalty could shield what I loved." She sensed the rest without hearing it. Betrayal like blade, loss like night falling without moon. "And now," she whispered. "Now," he murmured, "I shield myself." Her pulse trembled, not from fear, but recognition. Pain, when shared, becomes mirror. A candle guttered, wax weeping down its spine. She moved to steady it, fingers brushing the hot metal, and the flame wobbled dangerously. His hand shot forward, covering hers, anchoring the candlestick with startling gentleness. Heat surged through her skin where their fingers met. No romance, no seduction, merely human connection where she had expected none. She froze, breath trembling, tears gathering unbidden. He released her slowly, as though contact itself required discipline. "Strength does not preclude sorrow," he said. Emotion, unwelcome and unrestrained, spilled into her throat. "I am afraid," she admitted. "Good," he replied, murmuring. "Fear is honest. Only fools pretend courage at every turn." A tear escaped. She swiped it furiously. "They want me ruined." "They want distraction," he corrected. "Court hunger is never for justice. Only spectacle." She let the truth settle in her bones. "And you," she asked softly, "what do you want of me?" He regarded her as though the question mattered more than she understood. "Understanding," he said, "and perhaps, in time, loyalty not born of fear, but of recognition." Her heart beat painfully. "If I stand beside you, the world will think I traded purity for power." "Let them think," he said. "The world will think regardless." She inhaled, the storm sent curling through cracked windows. Rain, earth, and destiny unsettled. "You are dangerous," she whispered. "Yes," he agreed, "but not to you." Something inside her, battered but breathing, dared to trust him, not fully, but enough to feel the world tilt. "And if I fall again, then I will stand." His vow, quiet as snowfall, thundered louder than any proclamation. A distant clamor stirred in the hall, hurried footsteps, urgent voices. The library door handle rattled. Shadows tightened. Eleonora's pulse surged. If discovered alone with him, scandal would ignite anew. Hotter, impossible to extinguish. She looked to him. He met her gaze steadily, cloak brushing the floor like a gathering storm. "Choose," he murmured. "Hide or be seen." The latch trembled. Her hand closed instinctively around the raven-stitched handkerchief. Darkness outside roared, and in the heartbeat before the door opened, she stepped toward him, choosing shadow over the world that had cast her out. The summons arrived at twilight, delivered not by herald but by silence rippling through the palace like a chill. Courtiers drifted toward the throne hall in murmuring clusters, their silks whispering secrets against marble floors. Eleonora followed alone, each step drawn from strength she did not feel. Lanterns glowed like watchful eyes, and doorways seemed to exhale judgment as she passed. Rumor had gnawed her name to bone. Now the kingdom prepared to witness whether she would shatter or stand. Inside, The hall swelled with nobles lacquered in dignity and venom alike. Pearls glimmered on throats that once praised her. Now they gleamed like trophies hung above a hunter's fireplace. At the dais, King Aldrich sat rigid, carved from pride and disappointment. Near him stood Lord Alastair, golden hair immaculate, expression polished into careful neutrality. He did not look at her. His silence cut deeper than any accusation. Eleonora of House Oraline. The king began, voice solemn as tolling bells. You stand accused not only of conduct unbecoming a princess, but of tarnishing the honor entrusted to you by crown and kingdom. Gasps fluttered like startled doves. Eleonora lifted her chin, spine trembling yet straight. She looked not at her father, but at the assembled court. I deny the charges. I have committed no betrayal of crown nor virtue. A ripple of pity, disbelief, hunger. One woman dabbed her eyes. Another smirked behind a jeweled fan. Eleonora felt as though she stood naked beneath stars while wolves circled below. Alastair finally met her gaze. Sorrow flickered there, polished, sterile, safe for spectators. Had truth been on your side, he murmured, rumor would have died swiftly. Her breath caught. Or perhaps courage would have defended truth, she returned, soft yet cutting. His jaw clenched. A single heartbeat passed in which the hall forgot to breathe. The king raised a hand. Enough. Dignity must be restored. The crown cannot shelter scandal. And yet a deep voice interjected, steady as iron striking stone, the crown shelters cruelty with remarkable ease. The court turned. Duke Lysander Blackthorn stepped forward from the far shadows, cloak trailing like storm-torn velvet. His presence was not grandiose, it simply commanded. Even the torches seemed to bow, their flames flickering lower. He did not bow to the king, only inclined his head a fraction, the gesture respectful without surrender. You speak boldly, my lord, King Aldrich said, tone chilled. I speak plainly, the duke replied. Falsehood thrives because cowardice feeds it. A ripple of outrage rolled through the hall. Eleonora's pulse thundered. She had not known he would come. She had not expected anyone would risk standing beside her when loyalty was measured in reputation, not truth. And you claim to know this, asked the king. The duke's gaze slid to Eleonora, holding not softness but certainty. I do. Her heartbeat stumbled. He offered neither pity nor comfort. He offered conviction, a rarer gift than sympathy. Alastair stepped forward, voice crisp. With respect, my lord, you stake your word upon the honor of one already disgraced. The duke's stare carved through him. And you withdraw yours from the honor of one you pledged to protect. Curious measure of devotion. A murmur surged. Eleonora's throat tightened, shame and vindication warring within her. Alastair flushed, pretty dignity cracking. It is not my place to defy the crown. It is always one's place to defy injustice, the duke replied. The king's patience frayed. State your purpose, Blackthorn. Silence gathered like storm clouds. Then, deliberate as steel unsheathed, the duke spoke. I will take Princess Eleonora under my protection. I offer her my name, my fortune, and my allegiance. Let any who call her unworthy challenge me. The hall erupted. Fans snapped shut. Voices rose. Shock rippled like thunderstruck water. Eleonora's breath fled. Marriage? Protection? Or power masked as salvation? Her thoughts scattered like startled birds. The king's face hardened. You would bind the royal line to suspicion and shadow? You insult this throne. I strengthen it, the duke countered. You would discard a daughter to appease rumor. I would shield her to defy it. He turned to Eleonora, not commanding, not pleading, simply offering. You owe this court nothing but your truth, he said. Dignity is not theirs to grant nor revoke. Emotion swelled in her chest, rage, gratitude, grief for the girl she no longer was. She looked at her father, expecting his eyes to soften. They did not. She looked at Alastair, expecting remorse. She saw only relief masquerading as propriety. Then she looked at the duke. There was darkness in him, undeniable, unyielding. But there was space too. Space where she was not spectacle, but sovereign of her own wounds. The king's voice cracked like frost under boot. Do you accept Eleonora? Or will you choose exile over marriage to a man feared by half the realm? A hush consumed the hall. Eleonora's pulse steadied. She felt suddenly weightless, as though shame had burned away everything but her will. I choose neither shame nor abandonment, she said, voice ringing. If protection comes from shadow rather than sunlight, it is only because shadow remained when light fled. Soft shock rippled, then stillness. I accept. The declaration hovered, fragile, defiant, irrevocable. Alistair stepped back. The king closed his eyes. Grief or rage, she could not tell. The duke bowed his head, not triumphantly, but solemnly, as if honoring a vow not yet spoken. A courtier gasped. She throws herself to a wolf. No, someone whispered, trembling. She walks beside one. A bell tolled outside, marking the last light's death. Thunder cracked, shaking stained glass in jeweled tremors. Eleonora felt neither triumph nor defeat. Only change. Only truth stripped bare. The duke offers arm. She hesitated, then placed her hand upon his, fingers firm, spine unbent, gasps frothed like surf on stone. She did not flinch. For the record, she said quietly, meeting her father's frozen gaze, a crown that protects only the already adored is not worth wearing. A beat of stunned silence. Then a lady near the back fainted. The duke's lips twitched, an almost smile, fierce and fleeting. As they turned to leave, a herald burst through the doors, face pale, voice shaking. Your Majesty's news from the borders. Blackthorn banners are mobilizing. The duke's armies march at dawn. Gasps, panic, the scent of fear, rising like smoke. Eleonora's breath caught. Was she protected? Or possessed? Dawn bled across the horizon like a wound refusing to close, casting the palace battlements in molten gold and foreboding crimson. Eleonora stood upon the high balcony, wind lifting her dark hair, gown fluttering like the wing of a trapped bird learning the shape of open sky. Below, the courtyard bristled with armor and banners, blackthorn black and silver, royal gold and white clashing like two worlds unable to share breath. Steel glimmered, hooves pawed, and the low thrum of war trembled in the air like a held scream. Beside her, Duke Lysander stood silent, the heavy fall of his cloak a darker shadow than morning cast. He watched the gathering forces with a face shaped by storm and tempered by loss. Yet, in his stillness, there was tension like a bowstring held by invisible fingers. It comes sooner than I wished, he murmured, voice rough as stone. A kingdom should not need war to defend innocence. Eleonora felt her pulse echo the clatter below, and yet innocence has bled long before crowns ever have. Her voice quivered, but she did not lower it. She would not shrink. The world had attempted that once, and she had stepped into shadow instead of breaking. His gaze slid to her, slow, deliberate. Regret sits ill on me, he said, but I would erase your tears if I could. She held his stare. Erase my choices, and I am nothing again. For a moment, the world stilled, breath held between them. A raven cried from the parapet, wings slicing through light. Then the doors burst open, footsteps echoing like judgment. King Aldrich strode forth, robes heavy, crown stern, advisors trailing like frightened ghosts. Alistair followed, pale, lips pressed thin as brittle china. His gaze flicked to Eleonora, with longing trapped beneath decorum's coffin lid. Lysander Blackthorn, the king declared, voice booming across stone and sky. You bring armies to my gates and dare call it protection. I bring truth where cowardice festers, the duke returned calmly. The king's eyes flashed. You cloak ambition in chivalry. You have ensnared my daughter to seize power. No, Eleonora said softly, stepping forward. He stood when you let me fall. A murmur stirred. Alistair flinched, shame staining his composure. The king turned on her, pain slicing through anger. I sought to protect this kingdom. At the price of your child. Her words trembled, not from fear, but truth strained against years of obedience. I am not a piece to sacrifice for comfort. Aldrich faltered, just a breath, just enough to show the man behind the crown. Then the mask returned. Renounce this madness, and peace may yet hold. Renounce. Obey. Dim, bend. The words that shaped her cage. Lysander spoke, low as thunder beneath earth. She owes no man the price of her freedom. Alastair stepped forward, desperation breaking through composure. Eleonora, say the word and I will stand with you. I was weak, but I am not blind now. Do not tie yourself to ruin. Ruin, darkness, wolf, names carved by those who feared strength unsoftened for their comfort. She looked at him, at the belated bravery, and felt only a hollow tenderness like remembering a song once sweet. Your courage comes after safety, she said. Mine must come before it. He recoiled. Silence pressed heavy. The Duke's eyes softened, not triumph but respect. The king lifted his hand, archers tensed. Then you leave me no choice. No, Eleonora said, stepping between crown and duke, voice clear, I leave you every choice. I simply refuse to be punished for living mine. Gasps. A leaf spiraled through morning air like verdict. Aldrich's voice cracked. Daughter. The word almost broke her. Yet she stood steady. Do not ask me to return to silence. His shoulders sagged. And if war comes, then let it begin with truth, not obedience. Her hand brushed Lysander's, light like promise first awakening. I walked beside him not because he is darkness, but because he did not fear mine. Lysander's breath shuddered. Something old and wounded in him flinched toward hope. The king lowered his hand. Bows eased, but choice still lived sharp in the air. A shout from the courtyard. Riders approaching. A scout rode in. Sire, enemy forces mass beyond our lands. They believe the throne fractured. They come to strike. Shock rippled like fire through oil. Lysander's gaze hardened. There is your true enemy. Not the woman who speaks truth, but those who weaponize your silence. The king paled. Alastair's hand fell from his sword. Eleonora felt the world hinge on breath. Slowly, painfully, Aldrich spoke. Will you fight beside me, Blackthorn? Lysander bowed, not in submission but pact. For her kingdom, I would stain heaven itself. Aldrich faced his daughter. And you? She stepped forward, voice steady as steel kissed by sunrise. I will stand where light and shadow meet. For I am not broken by either. A cheer rose among soldiers. Hope cracked through dread. The king extended his hand. Not command, but offering. Stand with us. She did not take it, but bowed. Dignity, not surrender. I stand as myself. Drums beat. Armor sparked. Wind carried the chill of battle and beginning. Lysander leaned close, breath brushing her ear. You chose a hard path. She lifted her chin, fierce and luminous. I chose my own. And as armies marched, not for throne but truth, Eleonora felt the world shift. Not saved, reborn.